Howdy partners, it's so good to be back. And I mean that not just for the channel this time, but also to be back home. Because I just spent a couple of days in Rome and God was that an amazing trip. So just a quick reminder to take some time for yourself and to take that trip you've been planning to take, even if it's alone, because you can always make more money in the future, but time and your youth, that is fleeting and goes away. Memento mori, my friends. In any case, since I went on vacation, there have been a couple films that have come out in cinemas and a few that are lined up in the next few weeks. So these are exciting times for 2025 cinema. I will say it has been a relatively quiet year in terms of excellent films. In any case, in my return, I'm starting off with Friendship. This is a directorial debut by Andrew DeYoung, who also wrote the screenplay. And this film is marketed as a comedy. And in fact, on the poster itself, we can even see that this is the funniest film I've ever seen in my entire life. So I had no idea what to expect from this film other than it was a comedy. And I so happened to bring my mother along with me to see it because, you know what, why not? It's been a while since we've done so. And with that being the only thing I know about this film, it being a comedy, I gotta say I was rather shocked to find that this film wasn't funny at all for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has some great comedic moments every now and then, but for the most part, this was so cringe. Oh my god, like it literally gave me a headache at one point that was just so tense. And this just might be an artifact of me being that kind of viewer. I'm literally the kind of person that has to pause The Office like every 5 minutes because I'm just cringing so hard, like thinking, oh my god, this cannot be happening. I honestly fare better with horror films, all things considered. But I honestly thought this to be a very sad experience for the most part. Without going into too much detail, this is basically the story of this guy, Craig Waterman, who's a rather lonely and awkward guy. He has a wife and a son, but there are no real sparks in the relationship. And he seems to be a little oblivious of that. In any case, he makes an acquaintanceship with this charismatic new neighbor, played by none other than Paul Rudd, and he is the perfect cool guy archetype, at least at first glance. Once we look behind the curtains a little bit, we realize that he's maybe not so perfect of a human being, but even so, he's still someone who's very likable and someone who you would aspire to, especially for a loner like Craig who has no real friends. But unfortunately, Craig tries so hard to be his new best friend that he ends up ruining both their lives. Once again, on top of being super cringe, I just thought this was a genuinely depressing and sad story about a guy who just tries to be this people pleaser and without actually thinking about what satisfies him and just being okay with his own self, he has these truly surface level attempts to get people to like him that honestly just fall flat on their face, and it was very painful for me to watch. So if you are into that super awkward kind of humor, this might be your cup of tea, but for me, I was squirming my seat. Oh my god. So even if this wasn't exactly my cup of tea, I do think it has its qualities. The cast is great. Tim Robinson as the lead over here is 15 out of 10 when it comes to just being the perfect awkward guy. In that regard, knocks it out the park. A round of applause. I really don't mean to sound condescending when I say that. And Paul Rudd, like I said, is just perfectly charismatic, as he always is in his films. And I actually really appreciate the energy that Kate Mara, Craig's wife in this film, brought to the table. Even if I found their whole marriage situation to be totally sad. The film literally opens up with her revealing that she just overcame cancer and that she's distraught that she hasn't had an orgasm in years. And her husband seems to be totally okay and oblivious of that fact. If only the pain and awkwardness would end there. But alas, it does not. But on top of that, there are some moments of cinematography that really stood out for me, especially in this labyrinth moment in the film. And there's also a very pronounced use of the color red that stands out in my mind. And in terms of the music, there's some really interesting tonal shifts. There's just almost like ritualistic chant thematic that seems to repeat itself through the film, which makes such a strong contrast to the awkward comedy that we're seeing on screen. And the inclusion of Slipknot songs in this film are just outlandish and hilarious to me. I guess what I extract the most out of this film is this kind of cautionary tale of trying to force relationships in an inauthentic way, which is an important idea to explore in a film, and I think it's something that a lot of us have faced or seen in some extent in our lives. So I do appreciate that part of it, and once again the cast was great, but this just wasn't my cup of tea. So I think in my books this is a 6 out of 10, though I will put an asterisk on that and say that a lot of people do seem to be enjoying this more than I am, so you know what, I'm glad for them, but this is the kind of film that just rubs me the wrong way. Oh my god, I kind of feel awkward I brought my mother to this one. It really wasn't that bad. I think we just walked out there just kind of laughing like, what did we just see? So there you have it. There are more films to come that I'm very much excited for. So I'll be back soon. And with all that being said, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon.